Hey everyone, in my video series on the main antagonists from Batman, the animated series, today it's Poison Ivy's turn. Poison Ivy, whose real name is Pamela Isley, is one of Batman's most complex adversaries. Her personality is characterized by a unique blend of intelligence, charm, radicalism, and vulnerability. Ivy is not a classic villain. Her actions are often driven by deep idealism and personal traumas. She symbolically represents themes such as environmental activism, female self-determination, and the question of love, belonging, and identity. Poison Ivy appears in 6 out of 85 episodes. I generally exclude cameo appearances. Let's first take a look at all these episodes together and what we learn about Poison Ivy from them. Episode 5, Pretty Poison. The episode begins with a public event where Mayor Hill and District Attorney Harvey Dent announce the construction of the new high-security prison, Stonegate Penitentiary. While Dent makes the first groundbreaking, a mysterious person shows how they dig up a wild thorn rose and carefully pot it, a seemingly insignificant but symbolic act. 5 years later, an inmate escapes from Stonegate with the help of a helicopter. Batman, however, spectacularly foils the escape. In parallel, Harvey Dent sits in a restaurant with his attractive girlfriend Pamela Isley, waiting for Bruce Wayne. Dent raves about Pamela and reveals that he proposed to her after only a week. After a passionate kiss from Pamela, Dent suddenly collapses and falls into a coma. At the hospital, it is determined that he was poisoned with a rare toxin, the source of which is the wild thorny rose, a plant believed to be extinct. Bruce Wayne immediately suspects Pamela Isley. His research reveals that she is a renowned botanist with a doctorate and conducts research on rare plants. As Batman, he confronts Pamela in her greenhouse. There, she reveals her true identity, Poison Ivy. She wears a green costume and explains that she had to punish Harvey Dent because the construction of the prison almost wiped out the wild thorny rose. For Ivy, plant life is just as valuable, if not more so, than human life. Batman is captured by a gigantic Venus flytrap but manages to free himself. After a dramatic fight, during which the greenhouse catches fire, Batman saves the rose and secures the antidote for Dent. Ivy is eventually arrested and imprisoned in Stonegate, where she tenderly guards the rose in her cell and ominously vows, "They can bury us deep, but we always grow back." What do we learn about Poison Ivy in this episode? Ivy sees herself as a protector of the plant world and is willing to kill people to save plants. She is a highly intelligent scientist specializing in rare and extinct plants. Ivy uses her beauty and art of seduction as a weapon. The kiss with which she poisons Dent shows that she uses intimacy tactically. Her crime is a reaction to the destruction of her beloved plants. For Ivy, this is an act of justice. This episode establishes Ivy as an environmental activist, whose methods, however, are extreme and deadly. Episode 29, Eternal Youth. The episode opens with a woman, Mrs. Thomas, fleeing through a forest in panic. A mysterious pursuer finally sprays her with a chemical agent, causing her body to freeze into a human-like tree sculpture. In a threatening tone, the attacker says, "You and your kind owe Mother Nature a big debt, and I will ensure you pay up." Meanwhile, Bruce Wayne receives an invitation to the Eternal Youth Spa, a luxury resort that promises youthful freshness. Since Bruce is too busy, he suggests sending Alfred and his girlfriend Maggie Page there. Upon arriving at the spa, Alfred and Maggie are greeted by the founder, Dr. Daphne Demeter, who introduces them to Demetrite, a substance with supposedly rejuvenating effects. But Bruce becomes suspicious when he learns that several industrialists who had visited the spa have disappeared without a trace. Batman analyzes the Demetrite and discovers that it is a plant enzyme that transforms human tissue into plant material. Alarmed, he rushes to the spa, but it's too late. Alfred and Maggie have already been transformed into plant-like beings. The mastermind finally reveals herself, Poison Ivy, disguised as Dr. Demeter. She explains her plan. Each of their guests was involved in environmentally harmful projects. The demetrite serves as a punishment. It transforms environmental polluters into tree sculptures to protect Mother Nature. Bruce Wayne was also on their list because Wayne Enterprises almost made a deal with a deforestation company in the Amazon. However, Batman manages to defeat Ivy by deliberately destroying the enzyme container. A giant tree grows uncontrollably, trapping Ivy in its branches and destroying the spa. Although Ivy remains missing, the victims, including Alfred and Maggie, can be restored. What do we learn about poison ivy in this episode? Ivy now goes beyond direct poisoning. She permanently transforms people into plant-like beings. Her victims are specifically targeted polluters. Her spa serves as a clever trap for the wealthy who harm nature. The development of demetrite shows that Ivy masterfully understands biochemical processes. She operates under the alias Dr. Demeter, a reference to the Greek goddess of nature. Ivy has proclaimed herself the self-appointed enforcer of ecological justice. Episode 46, Almost Got Him. In this iconic episode, Gotham City's most dangerous villains, Joker, Penguin, Two-Face, Killer Croc, and Poison Ivy meet at the Stacked Deck, a shady bar. During a round of poker, they start telling each other their best stories about how they almost killed Batman. Poison Ivy reports that she was pursuing a devilish plan for Halloween. She prepared pumpkins with a special poison gas that was released when ignited. The gas spread quickly through Gotham, weakening the population and also Batman. Batman followed Ivy to the city pumpkin patch, where she attacked him with more poison gas. She could almost unmask him, but Batman programmed the Batmobile to knock her down, allowing him to escape. Despite her clever plan, Ivy failed again. What do we learn about Poison Ivy in this episode? Ivy uses Halloween as an opportunity to poison Gotham with toxic pumpkins, a creative use of holiday traditions. She came dangerously close to Batman, which shows that she is one of the most dangerous opponents. Ivy appreciates symbolic acts of revenge. Pumpkins as symbols of decay and harvest fit perfectly with her plant theme. Despite the poker round with other villains, she remains a lone wolf, focusing on her own plans. Episode 56, Harley and Ivy. The episode begins with a typical chase in Gotham. Joker and Harley Quinn are fleeing in a car from Batman. Joker, as usual arrogant and domineering, gives Harley contradictory orders. A failed attempt to trick Batman with a toy gun makes Joker take out his frustration on Harley. After a heated argument, he throws her out of the hideout because he believes she is useless. Harley defiantly decides to carry out her own heist, the theft of the Harley Quinn diamond at the Gotham Museum of Natural History. But she is interrupted by Poison Ivy, who is simultaneously stealing plant samples. After an improvised escape from the police, a friendship develops between Harley and Ivy. Ivy takes Harley to her new hideout, a house in an abandoned residential area above a toxic landfill. Ivy shows Harley that she shouldn't let men, especially the Joker, mistreat her, and injects her with a chemical that grants her immunity to toxins. The two begin a series of crimes in Gotham, making them known as the new criminal duo. Joker, jealous of Harley's success, tracks her down through a phone call. Meanwhile, Batman discovers the hideout using a soil analysis. Ivy and Harley initially overpower Batman, but when Joker shows up with his henchmen, the situation escalates. Ivy fights back against Joker, but in the end everyone, including Joker, Harley, and Ivy, is imprisoned in Arkham Asylum after a failed explosion. What do we learn about Poison Ivy in this episode? Ivy has a strong awareness of female self-determination and independence. She despises male dominance, especially in the person of the Joker, and tries to free Harley from this toxic relationship. Ivy is not only a brilliant botanist but also a talented chemist because she grants Harley immunity to toxins. Her definition of friendship is based on mutual respect, an interesting deviation from her otherwise cool demeanor. Ivy is a charismatic leader who does not hesitate to take control in a partnership. Episode 68, Trial. Pamela Isley, alias Poison Ivy, is once again sentenced to Arkham Asylum. Gotham City's new district attorney, Janet Van Dorn, is demanding a life sentence. But legal restrictions prevent this, as Ivy was captured by Batman and not by the police. In Arkham, Harley Quinn warmly greets Ivy. Shortly thereafter, Janet Van Dorn is kidnapped. Batman follows the lead to a meeting but is captured in Arkham. There, a grotesque trial is staged. Batman stands before a court, with Gotham City's most dangerous criminals as the jury, including Ivy. Joker acts as the judge, Two-Face as the prosecutor. The charge is that Batman has created these criminals through his existence. Ivy claims that Batman is responsible for her criminal activities, as she only tried to kill Harvey Dent aka Two-Face because he threatened her environmental activities. But Prosecutor Van Dorn extracts a confession from Ivy about her extreme, violent methods, which exposes Ivy as vengeful and relentless. In the end, Van Dorn realizes that Batman is not the reason for the existence of these criminals. The criminals chose their own path. However, when the Joker decides to kill Batman and Janet anyway, Batman manages to escape with Jan's help. What do we learn about Poison Ivy in this episode? Ivy sees herself as a victim of an unjust society, particularly of men in positions of power like Harvey Dent. Her conviction for environmental and plant rights is deep, but her methods are extreme and vengeful. Ivy also demonstrates her ability to manipulate here by trying to justify her crimes. Despite the shared hatred for Batman, Ivy is not willing to follow the Joker uncritically, which highlights her individuality among the rogues gallery. Episode 70, House and Garden. A gigantic plant-like monster commits a series of robberies. An unknown toxic substance is found at the crime scene. Batman suspects Poison Ivy behind the attacks, but Commissioner Gordon believes in Ivy's improvement. Ivy does indeed seem to be leading a new life, married to her former psychiatrist Stephen Carlisle and stepmother to his alleged sons. Batman observes Ivy, who seems to be happily fulfilling her role as a housewife. But after Robin is kidnapped by the monster, it becomes clear that Ivy's story is not true. Carlisle actually has no sons. Batman and Robin discover Ivy's secret lab. There they learn the shocking truth: Ivy has created plant-based clones from Carlisle's DNA, rapid growth cycles in which the children grow into monsters and then die. Ivy explains that she wanted to create a perfect family because her hyperimmune biology prevents her from having children herself. When Ivy escapes, her last plant clone dissolves in a green liquid. The real Ivy flees Gotham and looks at a photo of her perfect family life, crying. What do we learn about Poison Ivy in this episode? Ivy reveals her emotional vulnerability for the first time. She longs for a normal family that she cannot have biologically. Her ability to create human-like plant clones showcases Ivy's brilliant scientific expertise. Ivy has not only environmental motives but also deep personal longings. Her experiments reveal a tragic side. She is willing to cross moral boundaries to fill emotional voids. This episode portrays Ivy in a particularly tragic light. Despite her crimes, one feels pity for her, as her desire for love and belonging is fundamentally human. Alright, then let's take a detailed look at a characterization of Poison Ivy once again. Pamela Isley was originally a brilliant botanist. After a scientific accident or a deliberate series of self-experiments, depending on the adaptation, she developed a toxic immunity that grants her control over plants. This transformation has alienated her, making her feel more connected to the plant world than to humans. Ivy's main motivation is to protect nature from destruction by humanity. Her crimes are often acts of protest against environmental pollution, greed, and patriarchal power structures. She sees herself as the avenging angel of the plant world and is ready to take extreme measures for this purpose. But alongside this idealism, a deep longing for belonging, love, and a family of her own repeatedly emerges. Ivy is highly intelligent, possesses extensive botanical knowledge, and has chemical expertise. Her plans are often elaborate and based on scientific findings. With her enchanting charm, Ivy knows how to win people over or control them for her own purposes. Her trademark, the use of plant-based poisons, for example in the form of a kiss, symbolizes her ability to unite beauty and danger. Ivy's environmental ideals allow no compromises. For her, the life of a plant often weighs more than that of a human, especially if the latter harms nature. This radicalism makes them unpredictable. Although she outwardly presents a strong, independent figure, Ivy reveals a vulnerable side in intimate moments. She is disappointed with humanity, especially with men who have exploited or betrayed her in the past. Despite her rejection of human relationships, Ivy longs for an ideal family. This longing is particularly evident in the episode House and Garden, in which she tries to create a perfect family through artificially created children. Relationships with other characters look like this. Ivy and Harley Quinn share a deep friendship. Ivy becomes a mentor for Harley, who suffers from the toxic relationship with the Joker. Ivy encourages Harley to have more self-respect and independence. She believes in female solidarity and self-determination. Ivy despises the Joker deeply, especially because of his abuse of Harley. He symbolizes for her the toxic male behavior that she rejects. Between Ivy and Batman, there is a mix of respect and rivalry. Ivy acknowledges Batman's principles but sees him as a moral rival. Poison Ivy embodies several profound themes in Batman, the animated series. Human versus nature, it depicts nature's revenge on the destructive humanity. Toxic relationships and self-empowerment, her friendship with Harley Quinn illuminates the path out of abusive relationships. Female autonomy, Ivy is one of the few villains who acts completely independently and questions patriarchal structures. Longing for belonging, despite all her independence, she yearns for love and family, which she tragically demonstrates in the episode House and Garden. Poison Ivy is far more than a typical supervillain. Her complexity lies in the torn between idealism and radicalism, between the desire for love and the refusal to succumb to human weakness. She embodies the femme fatale, the tragic figure, and the militant eco-warrior. Her actions are often morally ambiguous. She commits crimes, but from a comprehensible motivation. It is precisely this ambivalence that makes Poison Ivy one of the most fascinating characters in the Batman universe, a character whose story is one of loneliness, longing, ideals, and pain. Finally, I will attempt a psychiatric analysis of Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy is a multifaceted character whose psychological complexity far exceeds that of a typical comic book villainess. From a psychiatric perspective, various pathological behavior patterns and personality traits can be identified in her, which allow conclusions to be drawn about deep-seated traumas, personality disorders, and psychopathological conditions. This analysis examines Ivy based on clinical criteria and proposes possible diagnoses that could explain her behavior. In many adaptations, it is suggested that Ivy experienced emotional neglect or betrayal by caregivers, especially men, during her childhood. These experiences could have laid the foundation for deep mistrust and attachment disorders. The biological accident or the self-experiments that led to her botanophile mutation have profoundly changed her sense of identity. The resulting alienation from humanity could have triggered a post-traumatic adjustment disorder. Her close relationships, especially with Harley Quinn, exhibit both dependency and dominance patterns. From her behavioral analysis, two main diagnostic hypotheses are conceivable. 1. Narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. Poison Ivy meets the following criteria for this diagnosis: greatness in fantasy or behavior, for example the belief of being morally and intellectually superior to humanity, excessive need for admiration, for example her self-staging as the goddess of nature, and lack of empathy, she disregards human life in favor of plant life. Ivy considers herself morally superior because she believes she has the right to decide over life and death as the voice of the oppressed nature. Her need to be admired is also evident in the way she presents herself: beautiful, dangerous, and unattainable. 2. Dissocial or antisocial personality disorder. Poison ivy meets the following criteria for this diagnosis: disregard for the rights of others, for example her use of lethal plant weapons, lack of remorse after causing harm to others and manipulative behavior to achieve her own goals. Ivy's crimes are not accompanied by feelings of guilt. Her actions are determined by a strict moral code that places plant life above human life. Her charming, seductive nature primarily serves manipulative purposes. In the episode House and Garden, Ivy's deepest psychological wound is revealed: the desire for a family. After she seemingly leads a normal life with a husband and children, Batman exposes the illusion: the family is a plant hybrid creation made by Ivy. The urge to create the perfect family indicates rigid ideas and perfectionism. The moment Ivy realizes the truth about her hybrids reveals a fragile emotional structure that oscillates between delusions of grandeur and deep loneliness. The ability to maintain such a complex lie, the perfect family, indicates a profound escape from reality. Ivy channels her anger, loneliness, and desire for control into a higher mission: the salvation of the plant world. Her environmental ideology serves as a defense mechanism against traumatic relationship experiences. Plants that she can control and nurture offer her a secure attachment alternative to people who have disappointed her. Her sexuality is used strategically. Her seductive nature is not an expression of genuine intimacy, but a means of control. Her aversion to men, especially those who mistreat Harley Quinn, like the Joker, suggests a secondary processing of her own traumas. In conclusion, one could consider narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder as the main diagnoses. Comorbid disorders that might be relevant include, on the one hand, a reactive attachment disorder. Ivy's relationship with Harley Quinn suggests an ambivalent attachment dynamic. On the one hand, she acts as a protective mentor, while on the other hand, she expects loyalty and dependence. Her aversion to romantic relationships with men points to deep mistrust, possibly due to betrayal or experiences of abuse in the past. On the other hand, a delusional disorder of the grandiose type could also be considered. Ivy firmly believes that she is the chosen savior of nature. This conviction determines her entire existence and justifies extreme measures for her, including murder. Since this belief appears consistent, yet logical within her ecological worldview, a delusional disorder could be present.